Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished and creative entrepreneur from South Africa, Mr. Ross Symons. Ross, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Ross is an artist and a creative entrepreneur, and he's made his passion into a profession. So, Ross, tell me a little bit about your own journey and what got you interested in origami.
Yes, so I am from South Africa. I grew up in Johannesburg. I now live in Cape Town, South Africa. If you've never been to Cape Town before, I do suggest you try and get yourself here. It's a beautiful place. I've had quite an interesting journey. I was in school in Johannesburg. Didn't really enjoy school that much. I wasn't very good at paying attention. I had a problem with authority, which kind of spilt over into my, my work career as well. Always had my own ideas, always had what I thought were better ideas compared to what my superiors had. And I always had I don't want to say a passion, but a fascination with many things. I've played music. I was on radio for a while, always tinkering on the computer, making things, little audio files, little animations. And origami just rocked up when I was about 21 years old. My brother asked me to learn how to fold a little origami bird. And origami, if you don't know what origami is, it's the ancient Japanese art of folding paper. Essentially, you start with a square sheet of paper, and using techniques and different methods, you can fold pretty much anything.
Amazing.
And for me, it was like a puzzle. I had a piece of paper in front of me. That was the beginning of the puzzle. My goal was to create whatever it is, a bird, a duck, rabbit, and off you go. You find designs online and all over the internet and in books. And I just started, dabbling and seeing how many of these designs I could fold. And that was in around between 2002 and 2014. And leading up to the end of 2013, I was working a day job. I was a web developer, so I'm a coder, building websites, applications, that sort of thing. And so I was in a creative environment. I was working in an agency. And, just looking around, I could see there was, a lot of other things going on, and I was always finishing my work and ended up folding a little paper, whatever, and all these little characters around my desk. And in 2014 I decided I wanted to get better at origami, and I wanted to document myself getting better. So what I decided would be a great way of going about that is I did a 365-day origami project. So that was basically taking 365 designs, folding them, photographing them, and then posting one each day for an entire year. And I figured it was at the beginning of when Instagram was just starting to become quite popular. I thought Instagram was probably a better profile or a better platform to post things on compared to Facebook or Twitter. And I started this little journey it was purely to document my own progress. Was I getting better? How many designs could I fold? And I just started exploring this whole space. It was during that year that I quit my job. About 4 months into the year, I quit my job. The work that I was doing, there was a lot of freelance work coming in. So I had, the luxury of not having to go and have to look out or look for too much work. And this origami project on the side was just a little side project. It was something fun. I never expected it to become anything more than that. And as the year went on, people started approaching me online. The origami community I connected with on social media, on Instagram. And I guess just through a stroke of luck and, some divine intervention, I got featured by Instagram on their profile. They saw that I was doing this project where I was posting regularly. I was also doing it at a time where the Instagram algorithm was very different. It was very much the time that you posted, that's what time it would come up. So I figured if I posted 7 o'clock every morning, then people who woke up and looked at their phone, the first thing they would see when they opened Instagram was hopefully one of my posts. And that worked for me very, very well. Where now it's kind of like you get fed stuff from, from days ago sometimes.
Fascinating.
So it was just a combination of, just the right things at the right time.
So tell me, origami is basically folding, or does it involve cutting as well?
Origami is just folding.
Just folding.
Origami is just folding, no cutting, no glue, no, nothing else really. You can use multiple sheets of paper. That becomes something called modular origami. But essentially you start with a single sheet, and usually you start with a square. The size doesn't really matter. It can be anything from a 10 by 10 centimeter square to a 1 by 1 meter square.
Fantastic.
So,
and where did origami originate?
Origami comes from Japan. Apparently, it started in, I guess, the 1300s, and it was generally just used as a pastime. People would do it as little craft activities with their kids. They would fold little things that would accompany jewels and for ceremonies and celebrations, that sort of thing.
My next question to you, Ross, is that what is the process that you follow when you start creating an origami piece?
So when I started my whole origami journey, I decided that I wanted to understand the principles of design of origami, which is not something that many origami enthusiasts do. I figured that if I was going to be selling my work or creating unique origami characters, which I was going to use in animations for installations, I couldn't go and take somebody else's design and then use that to make money from it. I couldn't go and commercially use it. So I started designing, and there was a couple of books that I read, very technical. It's a very in-depth, quite mathematical or geometry-based art, or art form at least. So for me, what I do now is if a brand or a creative comes to me and says, look, we want to create this origami dragon, for example. So I think, okay, cool. Well, have I designed anything that's similar to this dragon before? If I have, then I'll start with what you would call the base. So before you start, I guess, shaping and creating all the little details which go into it, you've got to get a figure which is pretty much, it has the right appendages in the right place. So for example, the dragon has a long neck, small head, long tail, reasonably short body, and then 4 shortish legs. So getting those in relation to where the square is, that's I guess the design process is all about that. It's getting those appendages, or those flaps, as you refer to them as, in the right place and in relation to the rest of the origami piece. It's all, I guess, symmetrical and
Amazing. So my next logical question, Ross, is how do you make a living from your hobby?
I'm still trying to work that out. No, I'm joking. So what I started doing, because I had this fascination with, I've had a fascination with film and music and anything, I guess, anything on the silver screen. I loved animations. I started dabbling at the same time with origami, also with stop frame animation. So taking a series of photographs, stop frame animation, I guess the most popular example at the moment is the new Pinocchio film that's done very well. It's all a series of photographs of just the objects moving very slowly. And I wasn't the first to do origami stop frame animation, but I saw little adverts here and there. So I just decided, let me see how far I can push these two mediums, or these two disciplines, by blending them together. And when I started doing that and posting it on Instagram, brands started seeing, wow, this guy's got a bit of a following. He's doing something unique. It's quite charming. It's quite quirky. Maybe we can get him to do or create some content for our brand. And that was at the end of my 2014 365-day project. And so that was 9 years ago. And I haven't really looked back since. I mean, it's an entrepreneurial journey. Sometimes there's tons of work coming in. Sometimes you connecting with people and everything's great, and sometimes it's quiet. So I think that with anything, whether it's a creative venture or starting your own business, there are ups and downs like anything. But I do feel at the moment, I mean, I've been doing this now for 9 years, and it's just starting to really turn into something something that I'd always hoped it did. And I'm connecting with people all around the world. I've been fortunate enough to do work for people and brands globally, which is amazing. And I feel very grateful that I've been able to experience
So
this.
what would you say are some of the most challenging or complex origami models that you have created?
So the ones I've created, I wouldn't say are too complex. I think because I need to work quickly, I need to get things that represent whatever it is I want to achieve. So whether it's a rabbit or, like I said, a dragon or a duck. But folding other people's models, I mean, I can tell you a couple of names of artists, but you wouldn't really know who they are. But there are some very complex designs that I have folded. On my Instagram account, every time I fold something quite complex, I do post it. But I've done multiple dragons. There's a wild boar design that is very intricate and detailed that I really enjoyed folding. That was probably sort of 2 hours of folding with instructions, and getting it wrong, changing it, like having to start again maybe. I folded lions. I folded birds. So yeah, I think the longest I folded something for is probably an insect. I think I folded it was a rhinoceros beetle, which was about 3 hours of folding.
Wow.
Which relatively it sounds like a lot of time, but there are some designs. I mean, because I'm quite connected with the origami community and I watch what a lot of people are creating, there's designs where people spend between 60 and 80 hours folding one piece. It's obviously not in one sitting, but just over a couple of days.
Amazing. And when you get into this, say, a complex design that you are creating, do you actually put down the steps before you actually pick up the paper to fold?
That's an interesting question. So I think I've personally got to the point now where I know pretty much where to start if I am, let's say I'm designing a rabbit, for example, and I know basically what the position is. I know where the head needs to be. I know that it needs to have a small tail, shortish sort of upper arms, and then longer back feet with 2 long ears. So once I understand the basic proportions and where the flaps need to go, I'll then just pick up a piece of paper and start folding and see how close I can get to that base before I move on. But I know that that's not the only way to start. There are computer programs where you can actually plot different points on the paper, and you can say, okay, cool, I want that there, that there, that there. What the computer programs don't do for you is show you the folding sequence, which is the step-by-step guide. So I guess as an artist or a creative or anyone in that space, you start designing it, and then it's just multiple iterations of, okay, let's try this, see if this works. And then once you have something that you're kind of happy with, then changing it around, maybe shortening, lengthening the flaps, trying to get to the design that you're trying to create.
Very interesting. My next question to you is, and this is for a lot of the people who will be listening to our conversation, how can people get started with origami?
I would suggest you just jump onto YouTube. YouTube is the best place. It's honestly, it's littered with very, very good designs. I mean, a couple of the artists that I followed that really helped me. One is a guy named Joe Nakashima. He's got, I think, probably the most popular origami channel on YouTube. Explains in very detailed steps how to go from anything basic, whether it's a little flower, to quite complex designs, dragons, dinosaurs, that sort of thing. So if you are listening and you do want to get into it, I would do that. If you are an origami artist already and you feel you want to advance your skills, there's a book called Origami Design Secrets, which was written by a scientist. Actually, he's a scientist. He was a rocket scientist that became a full-time origami artist by the name of Robert Lang. And yeah, also very inspirational story. Had a very, very good job as a scientist working. I think he was working at NASA, and decided to become an origami artist. Yeah.
And what would you say is the relationship that origami has with other forms of art and creativity?
I think what sets origami apart is I guess you're starting with a very specific limitation, which is a single sheet of paper. And therein lies a lot of technical understanding, where I don't think other art forms don't have technical, limitations. But if you are a sculptor or you are drawing something, then, it's kind of like if you have a canvas, you have a blank canvas and off you go and you start doing the thing. Yes, getting the proportions. I'm sure if you're doing something specific, it's different. But with origami, because you're starting with a single square sheet of paper, you're limited to that. And for me, in understanding that as a butterfly effect that has really helped me get to where I am today, is understanding that I have limitations. I have a limitation of just a square sheet of paper. And all I can do is use folding to create the desired object that I want. That has definitely filtered over into my professional career as well. And I think for a lot of, maybe not all creatives, but if you understand that you are limited to a specific, whatever it is, you only have these tools, this is how long you need to create it, and this is what you need to create. For me, that I enjoy the creativity in that space. Like, I'm limited by this is what I need to create, and this is how long I have to create it.
Very interesting. And, you mentioned that origami started somewhere in the 1300s. Has this art form evolved or changed over time? And are there any new trends and techniques emerging?
Yes, all the time. So I believe that in the last 70 to 80 years, origami design has really skyrocketed. And I think it has a lot to do with the available technologies. Obviously, the internet has played a major role in that. But origami itself has inspired many different designs in multiple industries. I mean, you can see origami design in space travel with satellites that need to get shot up in a very small, compact, closed shape, and then when it gets up into the sky, it needs to open up. So those are folding techniques that are used, obviously, by scientists and very smart people, smarter than me for sure. So space travel, they've used it in interior design. It's been used in medicine as well. The concept of a stent, which is a small, if you don't know what a stent is, it's basically something that goes into an artery and opens the artery up. So it needs to go in as small as possible. And when it gets to the place that it needs to expand, it needs to open up. And I think they have designed stents based on origami concepts. So obviously it's not folded paper, but it's the same concepts and ideas that you would use to fold a piece of paper, now applied to metal or some sort of fabric. But yeah, there are hundreds of different industries which are using the concepts of origami as well.
Interesting. My next question is that, can you share any stories or experiences that illustrate the power of origami to bring people together or inspire creativity?
Absolutely. So when I started my origami journey, I didn't really have many people that I could connect with locally, especially in South Africa. So that's, I think, why I leaned on the international community, which was on Instagram. But via Facebook, somebody contacted me and said, it was a lady who lives, a Japanese lady, actually. Her name's Kyoko. And she lives about 30 kilometers away from me. She reached out to me. She said, hey, I see you doing this wonderful project. I'm an origami enthusiast as well. Would love to connect with you and have a cup of coffee. And so we connected there. She introduced me to who is now a very good friend of mine, one of the rock star origami artists in the world. He's a Swiss South African origami artist. So we connected there, and Kyoko has she runs I guess it's a non-profit organization called Origami for Africa. And whenever I need to do installations, so if I have 1,000 origami birds that I need to fold, or 500 butterflies, I reach out to that community straight away, because I know that I can't do them by myself. I get the work coming in, I can conceptualize the ideas, I can say, cool, this is what the installation is going to look like. But I really don't have the time to fold 500 or 1,000 origami birds. So I reach out to that community. And what Kyoko does is she teaches in underprivileged areas in South Africa. She teaches origami. She's a very good human being, and I'm very fortunate to have connected with her. But every time I have a project, I connect with that community, and it's my way of giving back in the same way that she's helped me.
Amazing. And my last question to you, Ross, and before I ask you the question, do you have any samples you can show of your work? That
you mean with me now?
Yeah. That you can show us?
I wonder.
You don't have.
I don't actually have anything right here.
No worries. No worries.
There is, if you are listening and you do want to see some of my work, Instagram is the best place to look. So the brand I've created is called White on Rice, and everything is available there. Yeah.
Fair enough. And my last question to you is that what do you hope people will take away from experiencing or learning about origami?
I find origami very meditative. I find it very challenging, but the results that you get at the end of, once you have attempted to fold something, especially at the beginning, I've found it to be extremely rewarding. But it teaches you tenacity. It teaches you patience. It teaches you, it's because also paper is a very delicate thing. It's easy to just lose your temper, tear it up and throw it away. And in that space, I find it's quite, I don't know, it's quite meditative in a way. I urge anyone who's never folded origami before just to find a very simple design online and see what you can create with it.
Fascinating. And on that note, Ross, what an amazing conversation this has been. I mean, I have never understood origami. I've seen a few things that people do fold, but I didn't understand what really goes into folding an origami piece of paper. Thank you so much for speaking to me about so many different aspects of origami. I'm sure a lot of the thoughts that you have given will be taken up by a lot of our viewers and listeners, and maybe we'll have more origami artists coming up in future. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.